Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have our speakers and all of you here with the hope that you will find it helpful as you grow your career in kinesiology. Before we get started, please ensure you keep your microphones turned off throughout the first part of the event. For tonight, our speakers will present and share their experiences in the first hour. Afterwards, we will answer pre-submitted questions. Finally, you will have the opportunity to connect with our speakers in breakout rooms for the last 15 to 20 minutes, where you can ask specific questions and connect further. Without further ado, I would like to introduce James, our first speaker for today. As a registered kinesiologist, James has a diverse background in both research and clinical operations management, where he is currently the Executive Director of Parasport Ontario. Welcome, James.
Thanks. Thanks very much for the introduction, and thanks to everyone, taking the time to come tonight and listen to us speak. And hopefully, we can, say something new or something you haven't heard before that helps to guide you or inspire you or think of something different in terms of your career path. I'll just share my screen here. So I think as you heard, we're all going to kind of talk about our careers, our path, and for myself, and what I would say is somewhat of a unique path. And for once I've kind of moved into my career, I'll say outside of school, utilizing my registered kinesiologist designation in a somewhat more unique, I'll say, using the knowledge, but in a non-clinical capacity in terms of seeing clients and hands-on with clients. But so again, hopefully that sort of opens up your eyes to other options out there besides more of that more clinical or working in that clinical realm. So to start a little bit more personal about myself, I grew up in Newmarket, just north of Toronto. Played, sports growing up my whole life, hockey, soccer. I played varsity soccer at the University of Waterloo for my undergrad degree, which was amazing. Now, somewhat retired from sports with two younger girls. I live in Scarborough, very close to Variety Village, which is actually where my current role is as executive director of Parasport Ontario. So very convenient, a couple of minutes from Variety Village in Scarborough. So yeah, that's just a bit about me personally. So growing up, played sports, liked that sciencey side of things. So probably very similar to a lot of you that are listening right now. So kinesiology was sort of that more obvious choice, and the bigger choice was sort of where to go. I chose University of Waterloo, somewhat specifically because of their co-op program in that undergraduate degree. So intermittently throughout your degree, every 4 months, I had an opportunity to have a placement in a different area. So really with that, with that undergrad degree, I got that opportunity to test out the waters in different area, whether it was sort of that kin or physio assistant in a clinic, more of that personal training side, cardiac rehab. So really had lots of sort of different experiences in my undergrad degree that helped to sort of educate or guide me of what maybe I would like to pursue, what maybe I don't like. So it kind of gave me that head start of experiences or work experiences during my undergrad degree, to kind of guide my mind. But really I tried to keep a very open mind, as that's one huge benefit of an undergrad in kin degree, is that you really can do anything. So all of my friends, at the end of our undergrads are getting close to the end where you're picking certain courses that you need. I saw a huge spectrum of what people were going to do, whether it was medical school, nursing, some people going in that workplace injury, WSIB ergonomist role, personal training, physio, OT, chiropractic. So saw the spectrum of what all my friends were kind of choosing to do. And, sometimes Marks has a lot to do with it on what you can get into. But for myself, I couldn't quite decide or didn't really have that, passion to in terms of any of those areas, and sort of liked them all, but didn't really know what I wanted to do, and didn't really want to decide on either of those options. So again, in a good way, your kin degree really sets you up with a great foundation and a great base of knowledge of what's out there and what to do. But in a bad way, there's a million options, so it's sometimes hard to choose that one option, which is, truthfully where I was at. So happy to graduate. It was a 5-year degree instead of 4 years, because of the co-op placements. So after 5 years, was happy to graduate, great. But then it was sort of a what do you do next, sort of thing in your career. So really, yeah, for myself, I was, out in the work world post undergrad degree. I worked in a physio clinic as a sort of physio assistant. Worked at Sport Check for a while, so really just trying to make money, get out there, and really decide what to do next. Um, so for myself, I, connected with friends that were out there, and one of my friends who was doing his master's and eventual PhD mentioned an opportunity at the University of Guelph with research. A supervisor he knew was looking for a student to start their master's in sort of biomechanics. So I just went and met with him and talked with that professor of different interests and what his scope was, and really it got me thinking of different areas of research, and that's when I started to, feel that enthusiasm or passion of what I wanted to do next. And it was research and looking at, and so I ended up starting at the University of Guelph, doing my master's of biomechanics and neuroscience and human health and nutritional sciences department. That name might have changed, but it was when I was there. And for myself, there was sort of that decision of, a course-based master's versus thesis-based master's, which I was sort of unaware of in terms of a decision or options out there. Course-based master's, you're still doing a research project, there's courses that you take, to learn different fundamentals, plus your research project. There just isn't that sort of extra step of sort of defending your thesis. You have a thesis report and things to make as part of your master's, but it's missing that sort of extra step at the end. But you still gain all of that experience, all of that knowledge, and do a full research project, with it. So mine was, studying balance deficits in varsity athletes following or before sort of baseline measures, and then if they happen to get a concussion, they contact me, and then I would do those same sort of balance measures after and look at the difference between those two. There's a thesis-based master's, obviously 2 years. In other programs, there's, different universities have it. Then there's the Masters of Professional Kinesiology (MPK) program at University of Toronto now that I've heard of. So if you're thinking of research and maybe you're intimidated of more of that thesis-based, and eventual PhD, route, there are sort of course-based or MPK program at University of Toronto that are options for you to kind of get that clinical and or research experience, but in a different way, in a more streamlined way, or in a quicker way, a year and a half versus 2 years or longer. So keep that in mind, if research does interest you or excite you, that there are options out there. So key messages here, trying to, have those takeaway messages, talk to your friends about their experiences and what they are doing or what they have done. Is that was my connection to starting my master's, was speaking to a friend who was there already. And I would have never known that option was there, and that never would have sparked my interest in what I was doing. So really it's, talk to all of your friends in your space or outside of, the space that you're used to, and find out, what is there and what options are there. So finished my master's, which was great again. And then again, it's the decision of, do I go on to a PhD or not, which I knew I kind of didn't want to do already. So that was an easier decision. And then now that you sort of have a master's degree or that research experience, then the doors kind of open for you to kind of go into that research realm from a hospital perspective or a university perspective, research, assistant coordinator realm. And so again, opens up other options for you in terms of a career in the clinical side of things from a sports kin perspective or from a research perspective, or combined. So really there's again more options for you at that point, which I liked, and that, again, that research side or that aspect to everything I found exciting. and then one aspect of that after I finished my master's was, becoming, part of OKA, registered kinesiologist in 2013. Definitely that was sort of right before the beginning stages of, a lot of transformation in the college and changing from, showing your experiences when you wanted to become registered as kinesiologist to before even they had the exam in terms of entry. So it was going through changes at that time, for the better and for the good to sort of build that reputation for kinesiologists in the system. From my understanding, that's still there. It's a lot better, but definitely a lot more knowledge, a lot more understanding of what kinesiologists can do in those settings and how they can support in many different ways and keep, clinics efficient, hospitals, and providing, great support in a sort of a multidisciplinary team. So, but again, for myself, that was important for me to have that clinical designation as I continued to, look for work outside of my master's. So now, it was that reality of the job hunt beginning, job postings, job boards, they're all out there. I'm sure you guys, if you're sort of post grads, have seen them and are always sort of looking. It really is, a full-time job when applying. Biggest thing for me and my experiences or work experiences is really, making sure to customize your cover letter and resume when you're applying for jobs. So, and that's why it takes so long because, doing research on the company, on the place, on other people that work there, and understanding that. And the cover letter is really the place for you to show your personality, your passion, your enthusiasm for that work, and how your work-related experiences relate to that, your transferable skills. That's really the place to do it versus your resume, which is really just listing your education and past work experiences. But for them to kind of get to know you as a person, that's where the cover letter is so important to customize that, and make sure you're hitting those key areas for it to stand out to them, as opposed to, good formatting resume and cover letter is great. All of those things are great and making sure, it looks good, but, you really want to have that good customized content where you're not just changing the job title in a cover letter and resume. It shows that you care and it shows that, that's what you want versus just throwing out 100 resumes. It's better to pick the ones you really want, put in the effort for the ones you really want, and you'll see more success that way. In terms of, looking for a job, connecting to people in places of interest is really what I try to do. So reaching out to those places that you are interested in a job. So whether you found it on a job board or not, I reached out to Holland Bloor View Kids Rehab Hospital in the concussion center area there, brain injury concussion side of things. Because I'd done my research in concussion, they were just starting a concussion lab. I reached out to one of the scientists to ask him, I'm interested in concussion or research in concussions in youth, and I'd love to meet with you and learn more. So it's really just meeting with them to learn more, show my interest, show my passion. There was no job available at all, so I met with them. We had a great meeting. Said, let me know if anything comes up or even volunteer opportunities. And yeah, and then 2 or 3 months down the road, he contacted me saying that they just got a grant, a big grant, and wanted to bring on a research coordinator for that. They liked me in the meeting, asked me to come in for an interview, and that's how I was successful. So really that's, that can be a big thing to build those relationships before even a job's posted, and then that's when you can really, then they'll think of you at that point. So again, started there as a research coordinator. So really utilizing my, research experience, but needing that clinical mindset, looking at baseline measures for youth before and after concussion. This study for 2 years, amazing experiences, a huge study with thousands of kids, and really expanded my sort of research side of things in a more clinical, hospital-based setting. This study then informed an early care clinical program. And again, as this, over 2 years, this is where, I was able to show that I could handle that and have that leadership and have more responsibility. So then when this clinical program was being developed and me being part of that, I showed I had that experience to sort of move on and develop into the role, becoming the manager for that clinical program. So I was managing a clinical program with physicians and OTs to provide clinical care for youth after sustaining concussion, partnering with schools and sports organizations to provide concussion, education. Roland's Law sort of was created along the time that I was working. So that was a huge advancement in education, protocol development. So really that, it all kind of culminated together and this progression that was there, and as things were being created. Biggest things here is planning ahead is great, but being agile and being ready to pivot and move as needed as things change is very important. You can't get you sort of too solid where you're not ready to move, as then you'll sort of get lost. Being able to pivot and adapt are really good skills to have, which I learned in my time at Hall and Bloorview. Quickly, these are some of the infographics that we created in terms of providing education to people. So finding, unique ways to provide that education is really important as well. And then, yeah, I always had that desire or feeling that I could do more and wanted to do more from a leadership perspective, looked internally at Hall and Bloorview, but also looked externally, which again is more normalized now. And this opportunity came up to, for executive director of Parasport Ontario. I had that passion for youth, and learned a lot at Hall and Bloorview, youth with disabilities. So this being, all ages and all disabilities, but promoting more, sport activity for people with disabilities, adaptive physical education and fitness. I had that passion for, and really going into the interview and learn and applying for this position, showing that confidence, showing my transferable skills for the position, and everything that I could bring to it from a research perspective, from that clinical understanding perspective, from a partnerships perspective that I'd done at Hall and Bloorview. So it was really showing that I had all those skill sets and that confidence. And the clinical designation does help with that, and knowing I had that experience besides, program management and research and all of those things combined, really allowed me to show that I was ready for that next step in my career outside of more of that management side of things. So yeah, it's been a couple months, and really Parasport Ontario, does so much to support, the disability community, to connect to different parasports in their area. We have a resource hub now. We have a Parasport magazine that goes out to everyone. We do try-it events for people to, try out adaptive sports. We help build adaptive programming. We have a fund to help support to help people purchase adaptive equipment. So really, there's just like a breadth of everything they do at Parasport Ontario. I love what I do every day for these first 8 months that I've been working, and really, it's, having that passion for what you do and waking up every day is amazing. Thanks so much for your time. Here's my email. I think they're passing out emails as well in different ways. But again, if you have questions, come to the breakout room, and I'm happy to kind of dive in deeper to any of those topics that I touched on today. So thanks very much for everyone's time.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, James. It must be rewarding to help individuals with disabilities achieve their goals through sports. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, now I'd like to introduce our second speaker for today, Karen. Karen is a registered kinesiologist who works in a pediatric rehab setting. Her passion has led her to Western University, where she is completing her PhD in health and rehabilitation. Please join me in welcoming Karen.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Oops. Sorry, my background is not working. Apparently, my computer doesn't support background. So that was fun to find out. Okay, just share my screen and we'll be good to go. Okay. Perfect. All right, everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So my name's Karen. I am a kinesiologist and I work with kids. Super excited to be here tonight, and thanks so much for inviting me. So a little bit about me. I'm a PhD student in health and rehabilitation sciences at Western University. I'm a registered kinesiologist with the College of Kinesiologists. And I work as a pediatric kin at Kids First, which is part of Rehab First, which is a private company that is all around Ontario. I also work as a research assistant at Parkwood Institute and Lawson Research here in London, and I'm a PATH International certified therapeutic riding instructor and mentor. So in my spare time, I hang out with my dog and my horse here, which is pictured. Her name is Pippa. And so my timeline here, just showing a few kind of key points, I think, in my kind of career trajectory. And one thing that I wanted to highlight on here is in 2009, I started volunteering at a place called Surrey Therapeutic Riding. So I have grown up riding horses, and it was a way to kind of combine my passion. I didn't realize at the time for children and working with people with special needs of all ability. So kind of from this, I got started on my career path and my research all from my volunteer experience over a very long time ago, and I'm still volunteering there today. So in 2012, I started my kin degree at Western, and then 2016 graduated with a BA in kinesiology, also from Western. I loved my program. My interest was sparked in grade 12. I did an exercise science course, and it was just so amazing to know that like doing exercise you could learn all this great stuff about anatomy, physiology, biomechanics. It was definitely very different probably from programs even now, because it was really not very hands-on. It was much more lecture based, like we did labs and stuff, but it wasn't learning those skills to be like an RChin. I kind of had a couple years where I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do, started a couple different programs, but they weren't quite for me. So I decided to write the kin exam and become registered with the college, which was a little difficult after a bit of a gap, but it ended up being totally fine. I decided I wanted to jump into research. And I was able to combine a lot of my passions in research, which is really exciting. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on. And then in this time, I also started working at Rehab First as a kin with a pediatric population. Then graduated my master's last year, which was the thesis-based master's. And then I wanted to continue in research. I think my ultimate goal is to ideally be like a faculty member one day, but we've got a long ways to go yet. So still working on the PhD. So some related experiences that I have from to pediatrics and kin. So as I mentioned, I've been a therapeutic horseback riding instructor for over 10 years now. I worked my way up from a volunteer to being the head instructor at Surrey. So can't emphasize enough the importance of trying to volunteer in something that you're passionate about, because you never know where it might take you. Worked as a camp counselor for many years, canoe tripper, lots of outdoor experiences, worked as a VON, smart fitness instructor. So a little bit different population, but it was great to get the experience working with seniors, older adults, and then with the kids as well. I've been a board member of various things. And then research assistants in various capacities, such as in the School of Physical Therapy, Communication Disorders, Parkwood Institute, and Lawson Research. So just trying to try out a bunch of different things and eventually kind of find your place in the research world. So I'm going to try and focus a bit more just on the pediatric side of things, because I think that's what people were hoping to hear a bit more about. So in pediatric rehabilitation, I work in a private clinic. There is also, children's treatment centers that are more regional. Often these can be harder to get in a job as a kin, but definitely there's lots of volunteer opportunities and lots of great learning opportunities at these centers. So I work with kids from ages 5 to 18. The really little ones, they see physios. They're not really within my scope of practice. Say the most kids I see have cerebral palsy, but then often there's some other diagnoses as well, developmental delays, autism, DCD, Down syndrome. So definitely a wide variety, but mainly CP. Sometimes there's also rehab from injury or motor vehicle accidents, which is like a whole different procedure that you have to go through when seeing those clients. So always taking into account developmental stages and abilities. A big thing in peds is being comfortable working with parents in the room, which is very different from working with adults. So always kind of having somebody almost looking over your shoulder. They might jump into your session too, which is something you kind of have to get used to. And sometimes if they're in the way, you might have to ask them to leave too, which is a little bit different. I work very closely with physio and occupational therapists. So always in collaboration, really, which is awesome. Modify everything, all your exercises to make it kid friendly and fun. Safety is always a priority. Kids often do very unsafe things very unexpectedly, especially ones with special needs. So definitely something to always be keeping in mind. What I really love about pediatrics is that all your sessions, even if you're working, on exercise, they incorporate a whole bunch more skills such as fine motor, gross motor. You're working on speech and social skills all in one, which is really neat. You get to watch kids grow up, be a role model in their lives. And you often see them on an ongoing basis, for many years, which is really cool watching them develop. So I work in a private company. Usually I'm in the gym that we have. We have some specialized equipment for kids, but I also do home visits, pool sessions. Sometimes we go to the playground or rec centers. So each of these offer very different opportunities for participation and lots of possibilities for working on all those skills. So here's just a normal example of a session. How would you modify it for a 6-year-old? I'm going to kind of jump over this just for the sake of time, but just some ideas, instead of, just standing on the Bosu ball, you could reach down, grab a ring, throw it, and then you're working on a squat on the Bosu ball, but it's not in the sense of, okay, we're going to be doing squats today. It's a bit more of a game. Paw Patrol, super huge too. So I had to include Paw Patrol in my slideshow. So I also do hydrotherapy, which I also work very closely with the physios in doing this. It's amazing how much I actually just came from the pool. So it's amazing how much the kids love going to the pool and doing exercise in a different setting. Oftentimes the gym gets very boring, right? You're going there multiple times a week, sometimes for years and years. So it's nice to do something in a different setting, a little bit more independent, freedom of movement. And something just as simple as floating on your back is an amazing exercise for a lot of these kids. So it's a great way to get games in a different setting. So this, just a little bit different, working as a kind of a contract part-time employee. I'm responsible kind of for all these things like scheduling, billing, notes, which I wasn't really totally aware of when I started this path. So, learning the SOAP note format, learning different procedures for documentation for motor vehicle accident clients, what insurance companies cover KIN, what don't. Doing your billing, all your scheduling. So definitely a lot of kind of back end stuff when you're not employed full time as a KIN. So definitely I love working with kids. It's super rewarding. They're so cute. But I definitely, and you get to always be thinking outside the box. You get to be very creative. You're always challenged to try new things. So it's super awesome, but I definitely think, you have to have a certain personality to work with kids because there is some challenges such as behavioral management. That's something to always keep in mind. A lot of these kids do have more than one thing going on, especially just with different conditions. So learning to manage those behaviors sometimes can be a little challenging. Sometimes you get every sort of toy in the gym thrown at you and screamed at and whatnot, but then the next week, this same kid gives you a huge hug and is so happy to see you, drew you a picture at school, whatever. So definitely kind of balancing out those rewards and challenges. So also kind of highlighting the importance of collaboration with your other colleagues for just kind of skills to manage those, and consulting with families is also super helpful. And also working with kids too, knowing those kind of professional boundaries, keeping an eye out for things like child abuse or neglect. So definitely, there's some really great positives of kids, but also some kind of things that are a little different, more tailored to this population that are specifically challenging. So kind of some helpful tips that I've learned over the past few years. Always being professional, which we all have to be professional all the time anyways, but sometimes it can be a little blurry when you're going into people's homes, working with small children, parents, get to know you really well. So always making sure that, you're the professional, not not a friend or something. So I found that most of my learning came from learning on the job and through shadowing. had really great mentors. There wasn't really like a pediatric specific course to learn about how to do this sort of thing. But I think finding opportunities to work with children and working with children with disabilities is certainly a great way to start. And yeah, just getting that shadowing experience. And definitely like the practitioner I am today is very different from when I started out in 2018, just what I've learned, working with different clients. Some other things like kids and parents will ask you like a million different questions about all sorts of things. So being prepared to answer some really random questions, but also being comfortable with your scope of practice and knowing when to say no, like that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know that at all, which can definitely be hard at first, and providing, appropriate people for them to get in touch with, and then always being like a reflexive practitioner. So trying not to take things personally and use challenges as opportunities for growth. Like I kind of mentioned with those challenges, how do you reframe those challenging moments? So that's kind of my overview of the PED side of things. And then I wanted to quickly talk about my research. So having the clinical experience definitely, impacts my research and vice versa, as well as my coaching experiences. I did a thesis based master's at Western because I knew I wanted to continue in research in the PhD. So definitely would recommend, if you want to continue in research, the thesis is a good way to go. But if you'd rather stay in clinical practice or do some other, other things in the field, then like a course-based master's is probably more your way to go. My research uses qualitative methodologies to explore psychosocial outcomes. Very interested in children, but also in adults. I'm now shifting a bit more to adults and kind of youth transitioning from pediatric to adult care, and looking at kind of peer support and lacks of social networks for those people. In my master's, I looked at the impact of participation in an adapted physical activity, which was therapeutic horseback riding, on kind of multiple domains of health in children with CP, and going to the children themselves to actually learn about what they think the benefits of this activity for them is, which was really kind of a new way to approach this topic, which was really exciting, and we got some really cool results. So if you ever want to hear a bit more about that, just let me know. And then, my PhD kind of shifting a bit more to participatory action research in a bit of a different population, but still definitely kind of combining all the things that I really love in my research, which is great. Okay, I think I talked quickly enough there to meet my time limit. So thanks everyone for having me here, and I got my email, and I'm also on Twitter if you want to follow me.
That is incredible. Thank you, Karen. Pediatric rehab must be an interesting area to pursue as a kinesiologist, since you have to be always creative when working with children. So thank you so much. Okay, for now, our third speaker, I would like to introduce John. With more than 25 years of experience, John has combined his expertise in orthopedics, neurological rehabilitation, and exercise physiology to support people with chronic conditions to return to activity and sport within various settings. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for taking the time out today to watch our presentations. Let me share my screen, let's get right into it. Okay, everything look fine? Thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for the confirmation. I'm referring to myself here as a clinical practice kinesiologist, mainly because, as you may know, there aren't really any specialties in our field. We do have, though, either clinical practice or non-clinical practice as part of the profession. And within there, we have different job roles. So a lot of when you see people who have different titles that end in kinesiologist, basically, it's just a descriptor. So I always like to kind of comment on that. But just to go into what clinical practice kinesiology or clinical kinesiology is, as was said earlier, basically orthopedic, neuro, and different metabolic conditions. And this is just to general, just a really simple way of looking at the types of things that I deal with on a regular basis. I see a lot of people pre and post surgery, a lot of degenerative issues. There's some motor vehicle accident, also WSIB. Didn't really go into a lot of that in this presentation, but you may be aware, if you've been following some of the social media, there's been a couple of different presentations from different groups about, how to work within the WSIB, the Workplace Safety and Insurance Bureau, for things like creating programs of care for people who have back injuries and those kinds of things. So kinesiologists are being seen very, prominently as much as any other profession in order to deliver these kinds of services to different groups. Under neuro, we have degenerative conditions, also traumatic cases, etc., closed head injuries, etc. And metabolic conditions can really make things complicated, but also really define the difference between kinesiologists training and the other people within the clinic, because of the fact that you're often dealing with the other ones, the orthopedic and neuro conditions, alongside comorbidities or secondary conditions, such as, for example, you might have somebody who has knee arthritis and then develops diabetes as a result of there could be behavioral changes, there could be some psychological impact from their pain and lack of mobility, which then causes a weight gain, etc. So you have this complication of conditions that, there are not a lot of other professions that will actually work to kind of take that on. So I think kinesiologists are very good at, or at least very well positioned to be able to make a significant impact with these populations in particular. So it's a little bit about myself, about what I do. Professionally, I mix in-clinic patient services with in-home services. This would be, I live in the downtown Toronto area. That would be seeing people in condo gyms or in their other, possibly their workplace in some cases. The clinic is located very centrally. It's about 50-50. But also, I've been working as a peer assessor for the College of Kinesiologists of Ontario. So even like this week, for example, what I'll do is I'll have meetings with other kins and go over just how they're going through their practices. So we take a look at all of their charts. We go through different series of questions to understand that people really get the essential competencies of practice and that they're maintaining the standards. So I'd like to use that just to really help to boost my own skills as well. That's really kind of sharpened what I do in the clinic as well. And I think it's really given me a lot of just a lot of content in order for me to then apply and do things even better in the clinic. Recreationally, I always tell people, kinesiology is not just a career, it's a lifestyle. I am training for triathlons. The pandemic really kind of really stalled everybody. And through that, basically, we were only able to swim in the lake, and that was interesting. But so I've recently been training with the North Toronto Masters swim team. It's in the field, they're kind of the bad boys of swimming, primarily because of the coach. Anyway, if you knew anything about swimming, you might notice them. It's kind of where my real kind of interest is in right now. But the wonderful thing about all of this that we're noticing and how it relates back to professional content, a little while ago, there was a lot of talk about HIIT training. Everybody was saying, oh, I'm going to get the same cardiovascular benefit out of like 6 minutes of a HIIT routine. And that's going to have this wonderful cardiovascular impact. And now, in fact, what we're going to see more, you may have come across it already, is this notion of zone 2 training, which is the exact opposite. It's LISS training, long duration, slow, cardiovascular training, where you can basically maintain a conversation with somebody. And lo and behold, the research is showing that that's super important as well. And we're going to be seeing a lot of attention toward that. The beautiful thing is that came out of Ironman training. And so what I saw being used at the elite level is now kind of coming down, and we're going to be hearing more and more about that, I'm sure. If you haven't come across it yet, I'm sure we're going to see that as time comes along. So rather than going through my the timeline of my career for 25 years, it's had a lot of ups and downs and little things. It's, I thought, gee, what could I do to help you out as the audience? And what I thought was I came up with about 5 lessons that I learned in about 25 years. And here they are here. We're going to go through them, not in any particular order, okay? But I do want to mention, I'll just call them out right now. Common language is essential, learn from everyone. Some of this stuff you've heard from the previous presenters as well, and I think I'll maybe bring a different kind of flavor to it. Believe it or not, there is such a thing as too much education, and we'll talk about that. Complacent skills careers and become an asset, not an expense. Primarily for people who are going to be, looking to work at like an outpatient clinic alongside, let's say, like a multidisciplinary privately owned clinic. And so we'll get into that. So the first one is, I think as a new kin or as a student, understanding the language that your colleagues are going to be using in a clinical environment is really, really important. And I think without that, what we really have is that difference, that sense that you have that you don't really belong there, because a lot of people, and you're always being told, look, you've got a wonderful education, you know all these great things, and you can do all of these things, etc. It doesn't stop that sinking feeling when you step in a clinic and they say, oh, we're going to have you work with this person with an ACL rupture. You're going to be thinking, like the vast majority of people think, oh my God, I don't really feel ready for this. What am I supposed to do? And then you defer and you say, could you please just tell me exactly what you want me to do? Because I just don't want to make, that's actually a positive thing for kinesiology, is we're not out there trying to charge ahead and say, I've got this and not really step in fully prepared. We're very cautious about people's health, and we want to make sure that they're treated appropriately. But so number one thing is understanding the language, and that comes with some experience of being there, but also you taking an active role in understanding things like different injury mechanisms, different language, the terminology, grabbing a chart, for example, and going through, and charts should read like a story. This is what we tell people from when I'm doing peer assessments for the college. You should be able to go through that chart, and it should be a story of that person's reason for coming in. Why did the injury happen, etc. And going through, what did the treating therapist, the person who did the initial assessment, find out? What was the information that was given? What did they decide to do in terms of their testing? And as you go through, it should be laid out very, very well. Don't be afraid, though. Don't be surprised if you do this, that a lot of charts are terrible. Look like they have the middle of a book ripped out. But that's not uncommon. But what you should really do is take that opportunity to learn and to communicate. So you're going to be speaking with, let's say you've got a referring doctor. In our clinic, I send out letters on patients to doctors regularly. You have to collaborate with other health professionals who are either maybe part of your team or part of another clinic. So that's really super important. And the other thing is that when you're doing this, it really reinforces the kin's role as a health professional and not like an assistant, which kind of, when you put the term assistant in with somebody who's a regulated health professional, it really diminishes your impact, or it can do that. What we say where I work, at the clinic, is it really comes down to who's paying. And this is an unfortunate reality. It sounds like a bit of a scam, but it's not. This is the way the system is created, that people will choose physiotherapy because there's insurance coverage for it. Physios don't often refer to massage therapists under physiotherapy assistant because there's massage therapy insurance as well. And so this is why I created this meme. We treat the same conditions as everybody else in the same clinic, but we're the only profession not covered by extended healthcare. That might be a reality of it right now, but don't let that stop you from actually stepping up and being, if you look into your standards as a regulated health professional, or through our college, you are expected to maintain certain standards for, ensuring that that person has consented to your part of the service, and that you can really go through and just make sure that you're ticking all the boxes. I won't go into too much of that. We can talk about that in the breakout room if you like. So part of that whole thing as well is learning from everyone. Now, the wonderful thing that happened when we got regulated was a lot of courses that used to be restricted to physios and chiros and everything now opened up. And now we have courses that are being offered by physiotherapists, et cetera, physicians sometimes, that are very open to kinesiologists attending and learning beside other regulated health professions. I think that's wonderful because it accelerates your learning curve. But you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money in order to do those. There's a huge number of podcasts and webinars available that are free. There are some great podcasts out there on physiotherapy, like the two here that are free as well. British Journal of Sports Medicine and the Journal of Orthopedic and Sports Physiotherapy both have podcasts, and they're about 20 to 30 minutes long, and they go through very specific information on things like what should you know if you're going to be treating an ankle sprain. And these are usually interviews with people who have published research, and they're leaders in the world on these topics. So it's wonderful as an opportunity or as an option for your education. The other thing is social media, but the problem with that is you have to be very active in sifting out the quality information from the other stuff, which can be just very, let's just say, promotional. We have a lot of people that are trying to kind of bridge the gap between training and therapy. They don't necessarily always give you the best advice. Trying to think of one right now. Athlean X. I'm blanking on it, but there's a guy who's referring to himself as a pro physio, which is it's a made up term, but you get the message. You get the idea. Like really, really big YouTube channels can often have a bit of an ulterior motive rather than providing you with the solid education and information. They will maybe have try to be selling you things. Ones, however, that are very, very good would be Physio Tutors, which is a Scandinavian group that does an amazing job of literally their videos are about 2 minutes long, and they say, here's a test, here's what it's for, here's the research behind it, and thank you, next. Fantastic. I used it when I was teaching at the University of Toronto's Masters of Professional Kinesiology program. For 2 years, I taught the clinical course there, and I used their clips and it's fantastic if you need to remind yourself of tests that you remembered learning in your sport med course, or you want to kind of pick up something really quick, in order to help a current or a future client. And the last thing is when you're in your multidisciplinary team, and this could either be like a team who you work with, it could be just like an interest group. Unfortunately, I would love to see this turn more into like a social media, like the potential that we have in social media, whether they're LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, to have like groups of people actually share information and learn from each other. I mean, it's endless. But we're not entirely seeing it here, but I think it's a missed opportunity. It does take a little bit of like putting yourself out there, but I do think the opportunity for learning is huge. One thing that you can do if you are apprenticing or if you're employed in a multidisciplinary setting is really, again, like sticking yourself out there, saying you're gonna take one of the team meetings, you're gonna provide a short in service on a topic of something that you can do that maybe benefits the group. You got to think about everybody rather than rather than everybody kind of owning a different part of the pie. Let me just come back to here. The background of this being more of like a spectrum, okay? We have huge overlap with other professionals. Basically, there is no difference between physiotherapy and kinesiology in an outpatient clinic in terms of what we can do for clients. There are going to be things that they can do in which, like, controlled acts, for example, or top services that they have to be rostered for that literally are outside of our scope. The overwhelming majority of it is similar. And at the clinic, the orthopedic therapy clinic where I'm located, there is no difference. If somebody comes in with a musculoskeletal concern, my level of my competence training and the scope of kinesiology basically is equivalent to what anybody would receive from a physio, and it literally does come down to who's paying. And more often than not, if they don't have insurance, they're choosing kin because we're a bit more price competitive. Although I don't like to be known as the cheaper option. It kind of, hopefully that will change. So another lesson, you'll just forgive Morpheus, literally, staying in clinical kinesiology. I understand the way it looks when you get out and you're working, and there's a little bit, you're not entirely sure where this thing is going. You don't really see a huge kind of path in front of you, and you don't know what you should end up doing. So these options start coming out that start looking really, really enticing. Like, maybe I should go back and become a physio because I know what they do. Maybe I should go and become an OT. Maybe I should go and become a chiro. And, maybe I should go and do an MPK. But the thing is, the reason why they are very enticing to people is because they're known quantities. There's, except for the MPK, that's like a snooze alarm. Like I've done a master's as well. I actually done most of a PhD and decided I didn't want to be a faculty member. We could talk about that in the breakout if you want. But you have to take a look at what you might be missing. Like, literally, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go with clinical kinesiology? Because there is no path. You get to decide where in the matrix you want to go. Okay. But the thing is, if you step out and you try to go somewhere else, you go back, you do school. Like in my case, I went back to grad school. I spent several years, let's say more than 4 years, doing a PhD that I eventually decided I didn't want to finish. And I wanted to return, because what I thought was that the PhD was going to give me that extra level, that thing that nobody else had, that was going to make me really, really great in the field. And what had happened was I got an opportunity. I moved back to Toronto because my mother got ill, and I decided now's a good opportunity for me to start picking up some clients again just while I'm here. And I realized that my skill set was dwindling. And so this is when I really realized these are very, very different things, but I preferred working with patients. So what I would suggest, if you're considering looking for any future education, let's just like broad base this thing. If you want to go and do graduate school, take a look at what you really want to do after that. If you want to become a professor, if that really excites you, then absolutely just go for it. Okay. Opportunity cost is going to be far more than any amount of money you're going to spend, anywhere else, or even with, if you go to school, the opportunity cost might be, well, I'm not going to be earning an income for a period of time. Know that you're really kind of focused on that. Going back to school and then coming out and not being able to do anything is the far greater problem, because that's where it's more than tuition. It's the lost income. It's also the lost experience time. For people who are not looking at postgraduate, like formalized education, and you're looking more at workshops, I think it's a great opportunity right now. As kinesiologists, we're health professionals, so learn from other health professionals, distinguish yourselves. Apart from, there are a lot of courses out there that are really interesting and great, and they speak at a level that you're comfortable with, but you're going to be right beside a personal trainer who didn't go to school. And so how are you going to distinguish yourself from that person when you're trying to hold yourself out as somebody who can do something else, something better? Lastly, I'd say, depending on where you are, you might be working in a clinic or a clinic corporation that really promotes certain industry standard certifications. That actually could be very, much more useful than going back and doing an MPK and then trying to come back with and hoping that that's going to basically be some kind of a launch pad to a career. I would honestly say for the $20,000 that a master's in professional kin degree would cost you, plus 1 year of income, I've gone to Australia and trained with the best physiotherapists in the world for a month. And I've gone to the UK 4 times in a single year and trained with one of the most progressive motor control teams, also physios. And all of that money added up, the fact that I could also work during all of that was still less than tuition for an MPK program. And I would say that what I got out of it would be, it's far more applied, but I think oftentimes this is what we're looking at when we're looking at like postgraduate education. So know what you're looking for, know what you want to get into, know where your focus is, and find something that's going to fit that. And if you have an employer who's suggesting that you do one course over the next, that's absolutely valid. So one of the things that I noticed over the years when I started talking to clinic owners, because of getting more and more involved in education of kinesiologists, I try to do everything I can to make myself available. But the big thing was that they were really worried. They said that I don't have any way to really motivate my kin in my clinic. But the fact is that when you have these jobs that clearly they're not motivating because the clinic owner needs assistance. They don't really know how to kind of like really, make it better, etc. If you are to take more of an entrepreneurial approach, more like a self-starting approach, and say, hey, here's a bunch of extra things that I can do in order to try to bring referrals in for people to see me directly. This is one of the things, if you remember, there were conversations that the OKA, the KIN program, or sorry, the KEEN program did a couple of years ago, and it's up on the YouTube, on the association's YouTube channel. I had a conversation with the president at the time, and we talked about how a PTA job could actually be the best job you've ever had. And she was very like, all right, what do you think? What are you talking about? How are you going to explain this to us? And I had said, listen, the fact is that you have this wonderful opportunity. You're actually getting paid to be an apprentice. And if you use all of these opportunities to find a way to learn, to use that space as a resource, to learn the language, to pick up on assessment skills, to have that person who's referring you those patients to say, hey, I want to be able to retest this one that you said here was the test that showed that this person had this injury. Could you show me how to do that? And it's in their best interest because they want you retesting it, because if it ever shows up positive or negative, etc., that's relevant to the person's care. But you can do other things as well. Over the pandemic, as KINs, we were doing online group exercise classes for the patients at the clinic. You can create new services, entirely new services for different groups. So for example, KINs can be trained in the GLAD program, which is a knee arthritis program that's there's a certification, and a lot of different clinics are offering that. There's also osteoporosis, bone fit programs, etc. You can run those and get paid very well in order to do that. You can also create different packages for special populations, maybe, like Stronger Bones exercise group program in your clinic, etc., that focuses on particular groups that helps to kind of make you more of an asset. And this is when I talk about being an asset and not an expense. So you should always, if you want to make it into a career as a clinical kinesiologist, you got to appreciate that your wage at the beginning, when you're PTA, they're coming up with a certain block of money every month, every week, to cover you, whether you're working or you aren't. And that's a huge stress on the clinic director. So you are kind of in the same category as the admin staff and the secretaries. You're an expense. So this is why you're getting paid so poorly. But why are the others getting paid so much better? Well, because the physio or the chiro bring people in. They get word of mouth referrals, and it helps to run the business more. And so they're generating revenue for the clinic. And if you can find a way to get out of that expense column into the asset column, that will actually help you to step out of being paid an hourly wage and go into a percentage commission or a split, which is normally around 50-50. So if you charge $100 an hour, that's $50 an hour, which is a heck of a lot better than 15. And there are a lot of different ways you can do this. We're very social and very, very outgoing group. So participating in social media, doing things that are really kind of get attention. a word of mouth with the current clients that you're currently working with. Let them know that kinesiology services are available, and you can work, strike a, hopefully change the structure with your employer. And you want to make sure that, like what you're doing here is you're generating free money for the clinic by doing that. If you want to know more, you can definitely check out the information video that I did, or join us in the breakout session. This is another meme that I created. We got to realize, again, a lot of people like to believe that scope of practice is like physios do this, chiros do this, massage therapists do this, and gee, what do kins do? There's nothing left. It's not the case at all. And physios are all beating the drum about how great they are all in rehab exercise. And every single one of them that I know is certified in acupuncture, which is the most passive therapy around. And that's not a criticism, but it is really a way of explaining that there are opportunities, like everybody on a team plays the same sport. They just have different positions, and so you can make sure that you can use your strengths, your interests in order to fulfill just to really kind of excel in a group that maybe the clinic isn't really doing a very good job in helping at that point, and at which point you become very, very very important to the clinic itself. So thank you for listening to my presentation. You can find me at the following social media and my email. By all means, add me on LinkedIn. We're hoping to have some stuff through the OKA coming up in the near future, but I'm always happy to talk with people and hope to meet you in the future. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much, John. It was definitely insightful listening to you as you shared your knowledge as a clinical practice kinesiologist. So thank you so much. As our last speaker of the evening, I would like to introduce Dr. Locke. Dr. Locke is both a chiropractor and kinesiologist, specializing in craniofacial pain, neurological disorders, and sports injuries. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Locke.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to get going and just share my screen right away. Oh, I have 1,000 things. I'm sorry. Where is the actual? Oh, do I have that? Oh, no. There. Okay. So let's do that. Okay, and we can start that guy right away. Okay, so this is me. I'm Evelyn Locke. Thanks for having me. It's been actually kind of a fun walk down memory lane. Much like John, I kind of took the approach of being broad. So I wanted to kind of think about, because I figured you guys don't want to be me. It's weird. I figured you guys want to figure out who you are and what that looks like and what that unique experience is like. So I thought I would go over the stuff about like what I actually do, but then mostly talk about the process by which I felt like I was able to sort of find my authentic pathway in my career. So what do? I'm a chiropractor, but I'm also a registered kinesiologist. And it's funny, it's twice this week that someone has said to me like, oh, you're not a typical chiropractor in your practice. And then my answer was like, oh, I'm a kinesiologist. And then that seemed to, make them understand why. So here are some places that I work. I work at Mount Sinai Hospital, part of the Sinai Health System. As a registered kin in Cairo. I'm a clinical mentor. It's a teaching hospital, right? So I'm a clinical mentor for, everybody's talking about the MPK program, but I'm a clinical mentor for the MPK program. So what that looks like is just like teaching, having an MPK student with me. MPK is Masters of Professional Kin, in case anybody doesn't know that. So they're with me for 300 hours over an 8-week period, and it's fun. It's fun. I love teaching, and I think that's sort of why I do that. 1 day a week, I work at Pure Motion Center in North Toronto. It is just a fun day full of fun cases and fun patients and just like really fun people to work with, and that's kind of why I stay there. It's like a goofy day. I don't even wear shoes usually that day. It's sort of fun and different from sterile hospital environment. Just on the volunteerism side, I am the head of the Division of Musculoskeletal Health for Bridge to Health Medical Dental. It's an NGO that works in low resource settings globally to help increase sustainable healthcare as well as health education. And then at Sinai, I am the head of the concussion program for the Allied Health group. So what does my everyday look like? It looks a lot like you would think. Like, this is me a few years ago. Lots of rehab, exercise prescription, a bit of hands-on work too. I definitely do some teaching, which we talked about. A lot of my day is like doing tests and assessments and charting and making a plan and making sure that my patient knows what's going on and sort of working with their health group. The reason I have a brain here is because I realized over a longer period of time that all of the things that are in my clinical practice are very brain oriented, I guess. So most of my practice is concussion patients, chronic pain sufferers, neuromusculoskeletal issues, and then also just doing some consultation. I work at a hospital that's in downtown Toronto, right? So a lot of people go to the hospital, let's say for surgery, and then you might see me for a couple of consultations, but you live in, I don't know, Whitby, or you live in Kincardine, or you live in St. Catharines, and you have your own health team, right? So I do some coordinating with their health teams and just sort of like more checking in and reevaluations. I have this little girl here, mostly because she runs me with my daughter, whom I miss right now. But also a lot of people cry in my office because they just want to talk about their suffering, and it's actually kind of an important part of practice. And I can talk about that later in a breakout room if you want. But let's trickle on. Okay, so we had some questions that were given to us by Keen, and one of them was, what sparked your interest in this career pathway? So I had a different slide here, but then as the awesome speakers before me were talking, there was a lot of repeats. So then I made this kind of janky slide. So yeah, passions, curiosity. I want to help people. Like, oh my God, I said that in my Kin and Cairo interview, and I think it's funny that I still feel that way because it's so cliche, but I do, right? But something that was kind of weirder, I thought, were like my struggles, right? Turning struggles into strengths and actions. And I don't need to go through all this stuff, but when I graduated, I had all of a sudden I didn't have this like structured school anymore. And I was a competitive athlete, like I'm sure lots of kin kids are, right? And I didn't have that structure either. And I didn't really know what to do. And I felt lost. I had a diagnosis of ADHD and I was like, what is my brain? But then that gave me so much freedom to kind of understand, how I function and why I'm weird and your own unique thoughts. So I just want to say, like, you're awesome in your own unique way, and figure out what that is and like run with that, right? Because that's going to make you more successful in whatever way you're going to be successful. I had a bunch of concussions. I graduated school and like I did that thing that John said where I went to more school and it cost like an extra $100,000, right? So needed some financial freedom. Like all these things, none of these are really all that important other than the fact that they really did sort of spark my passion and change my trajectory in my career. So how did I get to where I am now? I'm a Mac Kin grad. What up, Mac Kin? But I did that sort of standard kin kid thing, right? I was in competitive sports. That's sort of how I identified myself. I was a swimmer. I did ballroom dancing, oddly. And it wasn't really all that important or thoughtful decision. Grade 12, I took an exercise science class, thought it was cool, and then I applied again. So I went to Mac. People sometimes want to know, like, what are the things you did? And so I'm happy to discuss that. Again, like, you don't probably want to be me. You want to be like awesome version you. So, I was in the Mac Kin Society, did some Mac dance, both as a participant and a choreographer. While I was at Mac, I volunteered with the CNIB, so the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, and we did sort of a learn to swim accessibility program, which I thought was really fun, sort of, combining the things that, I did and I was interested in. I worked with some acquired brain injury patients at Head Injury Rehab Ontario, which was called BISH at the time. And that was fun. That was like a dance rehab program. But then I did do that thing where I wanted to go to more school, mostly because I had really inspiring chiros in my swim career. So I went to CMCC. It's the only English-speaking chiropractic school in Canada. while I was there, I did all the same things. So I was on student council. I, took part in the healthcare team challenge, which is super fun. If anybody's still an undergrad and or considering going into other professional schools, it's a super fun competition with other students in healthcare professions. So we did that. I did the acupuncture thing too, John. But all that to say, like, find your passion. And I did do that, honestly, a lot of these things just because I didn't know what I was doing. I use it all now, right, in my practice, but I think that's okay too, right? Like a lot of my decision making came through learning from my struggles. So I kind of wanted to go a little bit more broad, right? You are all unique. You have your own possibly atypical career paths. And I wanted to think about what I wish I could say, like this version of me could say to myself sitting in your shoes. And one of those things was that I wish that I just kind of had a structured approach to how I was doing, right? I was not super good at writing cover letters. Like James was saying earlier, I got all of my jobs just through talking to people, doing genuine experiences where I was genuinely curious and excited. And that's just how I did it, right? So I think what your strengths are, I think are important and sort of run with that. So I thought I would go through this exercise with you guys. In my early career, a couple years out in practice, I went through this process because I, was tired and I didn't feel fulfilled and I didn't know what was going on. And so, I looked at my goals. What does success look like to me? And at the time I wanted to be like this awesome practitioner and I wanted to focus on my patient outcomes because even still, I really do care about helping people. But something felt like it was missing, right? I always keep stats and stuff on how my patients are doing, and I couldn't quite figure out why certain patients weren't doing as well as other patients. And then I realized I needed some time. I wanted more time with my patients. That's not typical for chiropractors, but like, who cares? That's what I wanted to do. My clinic director didn't love that at the time, so I got another job. And then I opened a small practice. I was really lucky in 2014. I was able to open a small practice, 3 minutes walk from my house, got some time back, super low overhead, super lucky. I was really lucky in that sense. And then I wanted to understand a little bit more about the patient experience because I felt like that's something that was missing for me. And then looking for themes on the reflection standpoint, like I was making a bunch of decisions because I was, I had been in school for so long. I've worked so hard to get here. Didn't want to disappoint my parents and all that kind of stuff. And, imposter syndrome, I had such fear of failure. And, social media and Instagram told me I was falling behind all of my colleagues. They were doing all these cool things that they were posting about, but really I felt alone and kind of ineffective. So I did that thing that people teach you in school to do, which is like, think about your passions and your strengths and how you identify yourself and, put those things together. I made a Venn diagram and I thought this must be it, right? Like I'm sporty, I'm an athlete. I love school. I love learning. I work hard, all those things. Here are some of my, genuine interests. And I don't know about you guys, but at this stage in my life, I really felt like I was, goals were easy to make when you're in school because it was just the next level of school, right? You had this sort of finite amount of time. So it was just like, what do I do? What experiences do I seek out so that I can like have a good answer during my interview, right? But I thought like those are things that I identified as a kid, and not that they're not true. Like I still do sports. I'm super back into gymnastics, oddly enough, and that's a fun part of my life. But I mean, that's how I identified myself as a kid, and I'm not a walking talking interview concern. But that's not where I was at. So what did I do? I kind of freaked out and I took a bunch of courses because that's how I cope. These are just some of the courses that I took. Some of them were useful, some of them were less useful. And I mean, just on a note with clinical education or continuing ed, like just because you take a course doesn't mean you have to do it that way, right? Like I loved SFMA when I took it, and there was like a year where I really did that whole protocol, and I still use a lot of that stuff. But you can pick and choose, right? It's your brain, it's your practice, it's your career. Do what speaks to you. I also did a million conferences, and at one of those conferences, I was lucky enough to bump into a prof who ran a sports rehab center. Oopsies. Oop. And that gave me an opportunity to kind of, work a ton. I was just like grinding hard, on a bunch of different medical teams, which was fun. Like CrossFit was fun, did all those sort of, like football, hockey, soccer, all that fun stuff. Taekwondo. And this is my buddy Mike, who's an awesome arm wrestler. And that was like a really fun sort of niche thing I got to do and learn more about the body and how people move. And that was all great. But again, here I am doing the things I thought like as a 10-year-old I was going to love, right? Like I want to work with athletes from all levels. I wanted to be a doctor. It's less important now when I think about it. It's kind of funny, but I did. I should be fulfilled, right? I should feel, these are the things I knew as a kid that I wanted to do. Why am I so burnt out? And I was. Early career burnout is so common because we just grind and grind and grind. And like, I was so upset that I wasn't loving this life that I had planned as a 10-year-old to do, right? So here I am back at this exercise. So now what's up? Reevaluating. Okay, so I'm further into my career now. Patients are doing well. I'm pretty happy. I have a second job where I have a little more flexibility. I'm feeling more confident. My clinical skills are good, and my patients are doing fairly well. I've got more money now. Why aren't I feeling fulfilled? And it was really this recharge section, and not really kind of knowing what drove me, right? I was missing this community that I had in school. I was missing this, inspiration and whatever making an impact was for me. So everybody talks about mentors. It's not a special answer, but it is important. I was at one of these sporting events where I was doing sporting coverage, and I happened to, so I was with an old prof of mine who was lovely, who was already sort of mentoring me. And then my old swim coach, when I was from competitive swim days, was there, and they were chatting, and it was sort of funny. And I was saying to him, like, listen, I've made this Venn diagram, and I'm trying to figure out like how to become excellent and find opportunities that are gonna, push me to, what I want to do. And so he sort of, politely laughed, and he said, Evelyn, you weren't that excellent as a swimmer. And I'm like, shocked, what are you talking about? You put me on the junior national team. And he said, sure, but that's mostly because you motivated your teammates and people worked harder at practice when you were around for whatever reason. So that worked out for us. And I thought, that's weird. And I didn't really realize that, and a little shocking, but okay. So then I thought, he said to me, like, really, what I always thought you excelled in was like the collaboration component and motivation component. And I thought what you liked about it was the team. And he was right. I lived for 15 years downtown in a condo with a pool, and I probably swam, 20 times in like 15 years. So it wasn't the swimming. They were joking back and forth with the prof, and he was a clinical prof that I had, and he said to me, and I said, but I love school. I love to work hard. And he said, sure, you also weren't that good at school. You were fine. Your marks were fine. And he said, the thing that I noticed about you really was that you really cared about the power of knowledge and like the equity that brings. And he said, like, that was one of those things that stood out for me. Like, you really cared about educating patients. Interesting. And then I looked at my genuine interest, and here I was thinking that this was the Venn diagram. I had to figure out, what experiences I needed. And I realized my genuine interest really had more to do with like creativity and pattern finding and puzzles and that kind of thing. So that's what I thought I needed to look at to find these opportunities. But really, this is what it looked like, right? And this is the first time in my life that felt authentic, right? I thought to myself, real, it's not sports, it's really the team collaboration that I thrive in. And I care so much about equity and the power of knowledge and bring that about. And then I just love pattern finding, creative thinking. Okay, so then what do I do? And this is just my pathway, right? Like, these are going to be different bubbles. There's going to be more bubbles, less bubbles for you. But this is when I first felt authentic. So I sought out experiences and inspiration that had that. And so that was the first time I went on this trip. I won't talk about it too long. It was wonderful. Bridge to Health is this incredible NGO. And if you want to chat about it more in the breakout room, I'm happy to. But it is, I went with 40 folks from across the country, medical doctors, ED docs, infectious doctors, infectious disease doctors, dentists, and and we went to low resource areas. All these pictures I think are from Uganda. And we went over there, and it was just so invigorating, so authentically, exciting. And I was inspired by everything. I realized I got to do some teaching. We partnered with on the ground clinical officers there who were just thirsting for knowledge, right? They were like, just tell us the stuff, teach us about these exercises. This is going to help so many people. And it didn't cost anything really, right? So I included this girl. She's sweet, only because it was wild. We saw her walking in a funeral procession for her grandfather, sad. But you can't see it here, but she has an open tibial fracture. She was walking on it for a year, right? And first of all, like, FFS, and also shake my head, but inspiring, right? Like, we were trying to figure out how to, like, calm her down and give her some pain meds and things like that. And the thing that really got her to calm down and chill out was candy, right? And that sort of taught me a lot about resiliency and what I thought I knew about the body and what I didn't, right? Anyways, I'll go faster because I'm over time here. So that led to opportunities that were just, when you're with like-minded people and you're with people who have the same passions as you get opportunities that feel authentic and genuine, right? And they just sort of flow a little bit more. So that love of teaching came back, and then I got to do a bunch of things. Like during COVID, we couldn't go over to East Africa, so we started to do this like Echo project, or Project Echo, where we taught a clinical kinesiology program online. So here's us doing some foot exercises. This was just one of our units was head trauma. So I guess closing out, I guess if I could, make any impact at all on you, I would say right now, like before you have to make all these decisions, make a list of people you trust and guide you, and to guide you, right? People who know you well and inside and outside of your profession and classmates, and schedule a time to talk to them, right? Put it in your calendar, because if you don't, life will make you do it and you won't have a plan, right? And that'll be more stressful. Think about what you love and what fuels you, and it's okay if those things change. Like so many of us make those goals when we're 10, right? And we're not 10 anymore. And then ask why, like really what it is about those things that you love, and put that together to figure out sort of an authentic pathway for yourself. And like, your goals don't have to be my goals. Like if your goal is to make a ton of money, then like do a bunch of stuff to make a ton of money. Great, right? Yeah. So I guess finishing off real quick. So tips. Change is good, right? I talked about this. You've evolved since you were a kid, so too will your goals, right? You don't have to have the same goals as what you're seeing your colleagues and your classmates do on Instagram or TikTok. And that includes your parents, right? Like, I know that lots of people have help from them or guidance from them, but you don't have to live the life that they want you to live. Find mentors, trusted colleagues, inspiring people. Inspiration is everywhere, honestly. My patients are so inspiring to me. And reevaluate what success looks like, right? It should change, and that's okay. It's scary, but it should change, and that's okay. Yeah. So I think, oh yeah, that's it. I hope that helps. I tried to kind of truck along really quickly. I still went 5 minutes over. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Locke. Working as a chiropractor and kinesiologist must be a very exciting career pathway that I think more students would be interested in learning about. So now, being aware of time, it looks like we won't have time for breakout rooms, but to make the most of everyone's time, we would like to focus on answering the pre-submitted questions. So if I can ask some questions to all the speakers. Yep. So as a new graduate or student, what's the best way to get relevant experience, and how can someone leverage this experience to find greater learning opportunities?
I'll take a shot at that if you want.
Yes, sure.
Just quickly, I think several of us spoke a little bit about that in our presentations as well. I mean, if you're choosing a mentor or choosing somebody that you trust for some guidance on what direction you might be interested in going to, that will kind of, I thought Evelyn's presentation was fantastic for answering this question. And I really enjoyed it. So thank you. Congratulations. That was a great presentation. And I think it was the shortest out of all of us. So you get extra points. But that's, I mean, that would, maybe she would be the better person to answer this question.
I think my mic cut out, so I didn't hear the question.
Oh yeah, no worries. I can ask again. As a new graduate or student, what's the best way to get relevant experience, and how can someone leverage this experience to find greater learning opportunities?
Oh yeah, totally, Jen. That was like my entire presentation was essentially just, you know, I know all these things sound so cliche, but like, who are you? You know, what do you authentically care about? I'm kind of a cliche myself. Like, I love helping patients. I love teaching. I love being able to educate, right? And the power of that. And so for me, that led me to the authentic experiences. I didn't get that for a while though, right? So what reflection, I guess, reflection and understanding who you are and making mistakes and being okay with that, you know, all that good stuff.
Okay, thank you so much for answering. And just one last question. What are the key skills you should focus on learning and mastering as a new kinesiologist working in the rehab field?
I'll take that one. Kind of go back that I tried to orient some of my slides to that as well. Communication is big. Learning to act like a professional. You know, we are now kind of stepping outside of being kind of called trainers, and now they're mistaking us and calling us physios. But maybe that's better. But the fact is that you need to do what you can in a rehabilitative role to kind of stand shoulder to shoulder with your peers. We're all there helping the same clinic population. Health professionals operate at a certain standard. I want to take this opportunity as well. If you want to learn more about how to be more of a work on the professional level, participate in an OKA committee. Please contact them, say, I want to help. If you want to do anything more to learn about regulations, contact the College of Kinesiologists of Ontario to learn more. You can sit on a committee there. It's a tremendous learning experience. You'll be helping everybody out as well. And that will fuel you and give you the resources in order for you to then take into your career and your job and do better there.
Yes, thank you so much. That is all for today. Thank you everyone for attending our event. Please join me in thanking our speakers for their time and incredible knowledge. For anyone who still has questions, you can connect with our speakers by email. Before you all leave, we would love to receive your feedback on the event today. Please fill out the link in the chat to provide your thoughts. And thank you everyone. This concludes the event, and have a great night.
Thank you so much.